Okay, well, that's okay. It means we can build up some stuff, and there are people who watch it online as on YouTube as well. Actually, in the windy weather, it's quite a nice thing to do. You can go and do your Tai Chi in the wind in a safe place, not on the edge of a cliff. And you get a similar sort of resistance to the feeling you get when you're moving through water. So you're feeling bold. So take a couple of slow, gentle breaths through just an awareness of your posture, your movement, maybe your breathing as well, if you're comfortable with that. So really whatever you're comfortable with initially, use that as an anchor for your attention, and as a draw, just to slowly draw your thoughts into your body. And with that, this lovely sense of just quietening, calming. It comes and it goes, but just a sense in which your thoughts settle. It's a bit like watching bees on a flower bed in the summer. You know, they land and then they jump off again and they land. And it's that landing that we're looking to build, because from that point of landing, we just get a better sense of what's going on in our body. And so the detail of the posture becomes more apparent to us. And as we get more into the detail, we can start to change it. And also, it just holds our attention more. So our bodies and our movements offer our minds a sort of quiet place to settle. And the awareness that comes out of that means that we can start to work a little bit more creatively with our posture. As always, looking for a posture that puts us in line with the pull of gravity rather than fighting against it. So the details of that are, you'll weight a little bit forwards. I've exaggerated that, but you can see if I pull my knees back, you can see now I'm sort of heading that way. I'm too far forwards. You would want it just about behind the balls of your feet, but to come upright, I just let my hips drop back, and it's quite an interesting exercise to sort of stand like this and see what it's like to turn. And it's actually quite difficult because your body's tensing up. Whereas if I come to here, then I start to lose some of the need for that tightness, some of the need for that tension. And the movement, the flow of the movement, the energy of the movement just becomes that much smoother. So it's not the only thing that can prevent that flow, that spaciousness within the body, space for movement. But it's a significant factor. And just letting your body settle into a nice steady rhythm. One that you just feel that you're beginning to resonate to. You want to feel supported through your legs and through the back of your upper body, so that the front of your body softens. And as that happens, again, less tightness around everywhere, good muscle tone, but not tight. And so really all the internal processes, breathing, circulation of blood and body fluids, and of the energy of the movement, the momentum of the movement, just naturally improve, as do other things, digestion and just everything really. Anything that requires some kind of movement some kind of space for movement within the body will begin to just naturally improve. And that's our starting point. We begin to become just a bit more aware of, say, for instance, our breathing. And don't force anything. Don't force your breath or anything or anything else. It's important that we feel comfortable with what we're doing. Your body will breathe, so it's fine. For some people, breathing method, breathing patterns are useful. Others find that there's too much to think about, or for some reason they're not comfortable thinking about their breathing, in which case just leave it alone, let your body breathe naturally. Don't hold your breath. And just try and feel that the movement begins to permeate right through your body. So feeling the brush of the air against your fingertips, for instance. And that growing spaciousness within your body as tightness begins to release, aided by the movement, which has a sort of massaging element to it, is mirrored with a growing sense of space in your awareness. You don't think of not thinking. We don't want to stop thinking. It's a natural process. Don't think of trying to stop or direct or empty your head or whatever, anything like that. Just notice those moments of quietening and settling, and notice that you can come back. And this, I think, is really important, both in terms of the physical postures that we take, the movements that we do, and of our attention, that nobody will hold these things for a long time. I mean, you could force yourself to really kind of concentrate, but that in itself brings a tightness, a tension. Or you can just accept that, your attention will drift out, but then it comes back. And some of the movements that we do, a lot of the movements that we do, that's reflected in the movements. We extend out, we draw back, we extend out, we draw back. I'm very fond of a phrase used by a lovely sitting meditation teacher from America called Tara Brach, and on guided meditation. She used the phrase, which I think is very apt to Tai Chi. She said, "You're building a muscle for homecoming." And it's quite a nice idea. There's some evidence out there to suggest that we do actually activate certain parts of the nervous system, and in doing so, we kind of hardwire those processes. So every time you bring your attention back, you're firing certain neural pathways. So Tara's phrase is very good. It would have been less poetic, but perhaps more accurate to say you're building a neural pathway for homecoming, but it doesn't come off the tongue quite so easily. And the idea is good. And I think this is one of the great benefits of the art, that through this awareness of our body and the way that our body naturally follows these patterns of expansion and contraction when we allow them to, is actually a really good thing to be able to take with us out of the actual practice sessions. Again, I would emphasize this is not a rejection of thinking or kind of just sort of reflecting on things. It's just we've been active, been engaged in one way or another. But just a recognition that it's not the only thing to do in our lives. And ultimately, I love the phrase from one of the old writings in Tai Chi. Well, there's two actually. One says, seek the stillness within the movement, within the movement. The other simply says, be still as a mountain, move like a great river. Not and move like a great river, or move like a great river, but these two things are seen as being connected. And physically, the center part of your body, hips to waist, is a very important point of focus. And it's described sometimes as being like the hub of a wheel. And all the movement around as the flow of the energy and the changes in the body move around the hub in the way that the rim moves around the hub of a wheel. So we sometimes need to focus on one or the other, but the ultimate goal is that both are present, the stillness within the movement. Don't go mad with the sinking back. It's a softening of the knees. We do go down later. Go down further, but we come up again. Really, in many ways, this is the position that we're looking to feel really comfortable in. So the deeper postures have many attributes to them, one of which is just a physical conditioning. If you can take a lower posture sometimes, then you're conditioning the tissue of your body to maintain this much more easily without straining. And your hands palm up. The actual position of your arms, no higher than shoulder height, extended out, but not locked out. Notice that my elbow is lower than the shoulders, hand, and it's almost like you could imagine a kind of corded loop hanging from like a strap hanging from the ceiling, and your hands being supported by that. And you'll feel it's quite strong in the muscles of your arms, because it's not that you're not using the muscles, just that you're using them differently. And again, you know, there's a degree of conditioning that begins to take place. Really, this is something that we want to build all the way through our body. So muscles are being used, but not in such a way that they really tighten up, pull, you know, squeeze on the body. And just drop your hands down and just bouncing a little bit in your hips. You can see from the side, hips, knees, quite soft, still turning. And I came across a similar exercise recently, and it was described as wild horse shaking. And the description was quite interesting, because the teacher was saying, oh, well, you know, kind of like, you know, the horse hasn't got a bridle, hasn't got anything in its mouth, hasn't got a saddle. So there's nothing kind of holding it in. So it can just shake itself, or like a dog shaking itself or something like that. And that's a kind of feeling that we want all the way through. Just let your hands swing up, your arms bending at the elbows. These shaking movements help to release what is sometimes described as a stagnant, stuck feeling within our bodies and minds. Okay, and then just shake out. These are movements that I always start my day with. Not necessarily have to do it for very long, but partly it's a reminder that that we don't have to sort of like go around holding ourselves in all the time. Now, feet below your hips, toes pointing forwards, and rocking your weight forwards and backwards. I'm exaggerating this, so if I fall over, that's why. But you can see what's happening here is that I'm pivoting from my ankles. If I take this pole, if in standing I'm like this, then when I pivot, I've still got that center line in the body. Oops, went back too far. So I'm not doing something like, say, this. The other thing to think about here is that it's almost like we also leave behind an awareness of that center line of the body. And I can go to about here, and here my weight has reached the balls of my feet. But if I go any further, if I get too far from that center line, it starts to become precarious. We have this notion in Tai Chi of something called central equilibrium. And central equilibrium is a term that kind of encapsulates a lot of these ideas. And in many ways, you could argue that what we're doing is to see if we can find central equilibrium in slightly less favorable conditions. See if you can come to rest in the center. As I said earlier, ideally, this would be with your weight just behind the balls of your feet, hips dropping back, but recognize that that might not be comfortable for you at the moment. You don't want to be any further forwards than that. You don't want your knees to be over there. You saw what happened earlier when I went too far. But it might not be there at the moment because it's a little bit awkward. You know, the body has the condition. Even that will give you this slight sense of angling forwards. So it encourages this movement. Again, I'm exaggerating now. Just letting my hips drop back, pelvis tucks under, a slight lengthening through your back. So when we come to this position of central equilibrium, we're standing still, we're standing in line with the pull of gravity. And yet at the same time, it's quite an energetic posture, your back's quite wrong, and it would take very little effort. I mean, if I decided I want to take a step forward, I'm only going to move slightly, and gravity is starting to pull me forward, so I can go into the step. A great posture for getting that sense of stillness and movement combined. Now, letting your hips drop back a little bit more. Pushing up. So, as I said earlier, as we go down, there's obviously a stronger feeling in our legs. There'll also be, you may notice, a certain amount of extension, particularly here in the lower part of the spine, because the curves in your back, particularly the small of your back, will be getting a little bit shallower and then deeper. And there's a limit to how far they would do that without straining. So there also comes a point where they just naturally start to draw you back upright. And we have a, how can I put it? We have a rhythm again developing, extending, contracting, and with that, a movement, an energy. We bring our arms around and use that movement to push the ball up and use that movement of the pull of gravity down through your body to press the ball down. So I say press the ball down. It's almost like if you can imagine you're in water, common image in Tai Chi, and say you've got a ball under your arms, pushing it down will be quite hard. But if you could drop down, the ball will go down with you a little bit. But eventually again, push up. expanding and contracting. Just let your attention move through your body. You'll feel what's happening in feet and legs, your back, the front of your body, your belly, your ribs, not necessarily in any particular order. And only sort of keeping your attention there on any one particular part of the body for as long as it's comfortable. When you feel your attention starting to drift away, just gently bring it back, but maybe to a different part of the body. And gradually, in our minds, this picture develops of the whole body moving as one unit. I always feel as that develops this sense of togetherness, I suppose you could say, collectiveness in mind and body, which I think has a very profound effect on our well-being. It just feels nice. There's more than that going on in Tai Chi, but that feeling is important. So one way or another, this cycle of movement, cycle of energy down into the ground through the pull of gravity, working unhindered in your body. And your body's response, which is this point where you start to push up again, is a constant cycle of movement, a constant flow working through your body. And then change into the wild goose. It's important with the images not to get carried away by them. They're there to offer an insight into the movement in one way or another. In this case, maybe it could be this image of the grace of the bird in flight. Could even be the feeling you might get if you were to wave a feather up and down in the air. It's very akin to the sort of quality, particularly in our arms. Make sure that the image that you're using doesn't become a vehicle for your attention disappearing somewhere. And then letting your hands drop down, crossing in front of your belly and pushing up. Fingers just gently circulate, parting the clouds. This is a little bit more abstract in its image, but has this thing, if you know, some of these cold grey days we've had recently with what feels like quite low cloud, and then suddenly there's a break in the cloud and the sun comes out. There's this feeling of expansion, of opening up a little bit in our minds as much as in our bodies. And this little movement will evoke that quality. and then changing, pushing this time when you push up, expanding all the way through one side of your body. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And this movement changing sides, but it's coming closer, so I won't be able to get my hand up so far. But here, the fingers wrap around, and there's a space within that, and then your arm rotates, and you pull down like you're plucking a soft fruit off a tree. I used to say an apple, but of course, apples are quite hard, and the idea is not to grip hard. So, you know, in the way that you might, if you can imagine picking a sort of, I don't know, a berry off a tree, you wouldn't squeeze on the berry, you would kind of grasp it within your hands. One more on each side. As your familiarity with the movement grows, your awareness of the subtle changes within your body associated with the movement will increase. Now bring your hands to your sides. Just do the first and the last of these movements, of pushing in 4 directions. So Tai Chi and Qigong could be described as conscious intended movement. And this thing about intention is something that gradually develops with that growing awareness. Awareness of small changes and movements within our body makes us aware of aspects of movement, aspects of our body we're more likely to be able to bring some kind of change to if we're able to focus our attention. And all the big movements are composed of small movements. And this is where some of the imagery can be very useful, and the way that we use our attention, the way that we use our minds begins to integrate more deeply with the movements themselves. This time, as you push out, bring your attention to that middle part of your body and turn. And then facing the front, pushing in 4 directions. So by bringing our attention to small movements, by beginning to influence in one way or another those small changes and movements, we gradually get a shift in I suppose what we might call the source or the origin of the movements. They seem to come from deeper within our body. And in doing so, using more of the body, a greater sense of connection, a greater sense of strength within the movement. We develop what we refer to as inner strength in Tai Chi. And that might be a very direct engagement of our awareness with a part of the body, or it might be, for instance, I mentioned being in water. This is a common image that we use. When we push against water, we move in a certain way. Pushing against any kind of resistance changes how we move. Imagine going to pick a bag up that you thought was empty and then realizing that it was quite heavy. you change how you're going to pick the bag up, or going to open a door that was previously stuck, and unbeknownst to you, somebody's managed to loosen it. And you just automatically, quite unconsciously, push hard against the door, push in a more connected way against the door, and then suddenly find yourself falling through it. So we bring that stronger quality of movement into the movements that we're doing, where they're, in reality, if you like to think of it like that, there is no resistance other than the resistance of the air around us. Good. Let your hands drop down, and then again on one side of your body as you expand, letting your arms circle out and over and down. And then, if it's comfortable, when you get to this top position, you turn slightly, sort of turn away from your arm. And changing sides. And then turn. Now, in this position, I've showed you the movements with the pole. It's a good upright position, but not all of our lives are spent upright. If I simply lean forwards, as I've noted before, I might sort of stumble forwards or something like that. If I push my hips back, remember there's still that image of the center line there, then my head can go forwards and it's counterbalanced by this movement of hips and buttocks back. And then to come to the upright position, and once again, let my hips drop down. And my head comes up and I push up. So this is not a back bend. It's a tilting from your hips. And so you're able to take a position where your head is in front of your legs rather than above them. And yet at the same time, you're still rooting down. And letting your arms follow this movement, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Don't go too far. So at what point it feels as though your body is beginning to stiffen up. Try and just recognize that point before you get to it. And come back the other way. Try not to let your head drop down. And then this time, bringing your hands in front and turn first. And then as you sink back, the hands get pushed forwards, swing around. Back the other way. Polishing the table. Just careful with your back and your knees. Again, I'm making big movements here, but they don't have to be this big. A lot of your attention on how this center part of your body guides the movement. One more time. Good. And then shake out. Have your feet slightly wider apart. And let your hips drop down a little bit to soften your knees and move from side to side. Going to about 60% of your weight in the leg that you're moving towards, that's all. A little bit of a stretch on the inside of the other leg as you do this. Otherwise, without that stretch, this could happen. Your knee will collapse inwards. Just here where your leg meets the torso, there's a little, what I sometimes describe as a valley. Chinese refer to it as the Kwa. And if you place your fingers, your forefinger in that little valley, you feel it gets just pinched a little bit when you move the weight in on that side, and then it opens out a little bit. This is still quite a big movement, but it's a smaller movement than some that we make. Is the Kwa opens and closes, and there's a build up from that through your body. And then you come in to your left leg and you turn to the left. And so that sense of the finger being pinched, it gets much stronger. So now there's quite a lot of movement working through the upper part of our body. And if we reposition our hands, come into your right, but hold a ball, your right hand on top, the left hand underneath. We go into the left as though you're pushing against something with the side of your body, and then you turn and you feed the left hand out to about shoulder height, press straight down with your right hand. Part in the wild horse's mane. You come back, you hold the ball, and then you shift across. Back into your right foot, and the same thing on the other side. The name is quite an interesting one. The horse's mane and the horse's tail is attached at one end and not at the other, but it has this structure. Very soft structure. So, this image of the horse running along with its mane flying behind it. It's quite a good image for your arms in a way. They're not just loose and flopping all over the place. There's a definite shape there. But the energy for the movement comes from within your body. The movement of your weight, turning of your center, the expansion and contraction working through your body, and so on. Take your time with these slightly more complex movements. the more uncertain you are, the more you're likely to rush. But just remind yourself, it's not a competition. If you get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. And rather than getting to here and thinking what comes next, follow the movement through to the end. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes that next stage will become apparent to you. So be patient with this. And when you feel that urge to hurry, just again, draw your attention back from that. Focus on whatever you're noticing within the body rather than thinking, well, I'm not sure what comes after this. Remember, as you sink your weight into the leg, you load the leg. You're sinking down, that growing springiness in your leg allows the compression. And then just naturally pushes back. And we guide that movement, that energy through the center of the body. There's lots of things that we could do with it. We've already done lots of things with it. But on this occasion, is to move the center across and to help it to turn, guiding what's happening in the upper part of our body. Here, movement expands and then contracts. And we hold the ball in this sort of neutral position as we position the weight, and then just do the same thing again. Opening across your chest down to your hip. And then when you come across, feel a similar sort of opening across your back. Feel how they alternate. Chest expands, then contracts, and then contracting, the back expands. And then the back expands, and so on. One more time on each side. Good. And then shake out. Keeping the width of your step, turn one foot out, step forward, about the same as the width, so it's roughly square. And now that weight transfer, filling and emptying, as we sometimes describe it, from one leg to another, moves you forwards and backwards. Try and remember where you felt that point of equilibrium, which part of the foot was the weight focused on. And you can refine this movement by beginning to focus on that area and aiming the weight into that area. And again, the legs loaded and releasing, the movement that might push you up actually is directed through the center forwards or backwards. And then raising your toes and your heel. so that more of your weight settles down in the supporting foot until you're able to just gently take a step in. Replace the foot from where it came from. Repeat on the other side. When you step forward, your heel goes down first, then your toes. Let's look at my front foot turned out slightly now. When you go back, the ball of the foot goes down, then your heel. And that slight angling out of your foot will just open up your hip and create more space for the sinking of your weight. Then on the other side, same thing, give a moment to settle your posture and then begin to move. Remember, this is not a race, we're not in a hurry. Again, you could imagine moving through water and just begin to notice how, in particular, your upper body is now responding to that. If I was in water doing this and I did nothing with my upper body, the pressure of the water would push me back like this. So somehow I would have to find a way to maintain that upright position. So without first sight, the upper body is very passive in this exercise. It's actually quite a lot going on. Raising your toes and your heel. So again, we're engaging more of the body. Another phrase I love from the old writings in Tai Chi is when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. The whole body is one way or another a part of the movement, not necessarily moving itself, but a key part of it. Stepping in. And then this time, your foot come in and take a few steps forwards or backwards, depending on where the room is. Being careful about the placement of your foot. Change direction if you haven't done so already. I always do this one in a straight line wherever possible, just to keep it simple. You don't have to, you know, if there's something in the way, you can turn, put your foot somewhere else. It's not a rigid patterned exercise. It's just really about, you know, considering each step as you take it. Now, have your right foot forwards on the side. I move my weight forward. My arms follow on a little bit later. And then back to this fisherman cast the net. Again, see if you can pick up any sense of change, of movement in the upper part of your body, chest, upper back, shoulders. Your arms are swinging down and slightly up, and a natural movement for your arms that are hanging from your shoulders. So there's a little bit of an expansion here, and then a contraction somewhere, a bit of an expansion there somewhere in your upper body. Again, we notice these small movements, and then go into your back foot, and as your arms swing back, you turn, so you redirect that expanding movement. Come forward, sink into your front foot, turn the opposite way. This is wind blows the willows. Expanding and contracting. It bears a similarity, of course, to the wild goose in the upper part of our body. And it may be that the memory of the wild goose, the feelings that you got there of expansion and contraction, those small movements, will themselves help to create this movement from inside, not having to strain your shoulders. Good, and shake out. In Chinese medicine, it's said that the energy in the body, the direction, the patterning of the energy will follow the mind. And the body will follow the energy. So we have these three elements of body, mind, and movement or energy working together in these exercises. Now, have your other foot forwards and your left foot fisherman casting net. So Tai Chi really engages all aspects of ourselves. One more round of this. And then fisherman sorry, wind blows the willows. You may notice the connection from the center of your body to your feet. And next time you're on the front foot, see that can help to raise your heel, bring your foot through and step. It doesn't have to be a high step, it can be. You might want to just raise your knee a little bit, maybe just rotate the hip, or just do this as an ordinary step. This is dragonfly skims the water. Something to be very aware of here is as you bring your foot through and possibly up, feel that sense of your hips dropping back. Remember exercises like rowing a boat and polishing the table, that feeling of your hips, counterbalancing other movements. And then stepping back. One more time. Okay. Rub your hands together. And then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, no arm. Side. Onto your back. This is as much of your back as you can comfortably get to. Gradually working down towards the buttocks and the hips and around your hips. And then down the outside of the legs and up the inside. Right on your belly. Finishing on the upper part. Shake out. So body, mind, movement or energy, whichever label you care to put on it, very much working together. And that thing about an awareness of our hips, and we put a gravity on our hips, and consciously and deliberately, remember, conscious intent, allowing the hips to be pulled down by the pull of gravity. There's all sorts of elements to that. When we're like this and we're about to fall, if I'm in this position and I'm getting a bit wobbly, actually by letting the hips go back, I go into this position for rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. It's a much surer way of remaining stable. It's also, as we get more used to doing that, because our attention is going there as well. Those moments when, and there's many of them, aren't there? In a busy, frantic world where everything seems to be getting on top of you sometimes, it's just a momentary thing of this movement reminds you of that quality of stillness. So we find an exercise really emphasizing that aspect and seeing how it works for you. I'm talking about the hips, but actually it could be anything that I've talked about that draws your attention back. So embrace tiger, return to the mountain. So again, sinking down and then pushing up. The mountain is a lovely image of this quality of central equilibrium. A phrase which encompasses both the sense of stillness, the sense of strength, quietness, however you think of it. So from this point on, as your arms come around, where do you feel the pull of gravity? Where would you want to be able to let your attention come to? Just to get that moment of settling. Is it something physical in your body? Is it the image of the mountain? Yeah, could be lots of things. One more time. And stand. And shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching and joining in.